not supposed to pour champagne. And I come around and I think, man, I'm gonna try to get a line in. I'm gonna try, because they're all having a conversation.
After decades of rumors, heartbreak, and countless Hollywood headlines, Brad Pitt has finally spoken the words fans have been waiting to hear. A confession that stunned everyone. In a rare and emotional interview, the Oscar-winning actor opened up about the woman who, in his own words, was the love of his life. For years, Brad's love life has been one of the most talked-about stories in Hollywood. From his high-profile marriage to Jennifer Aniston to his whirlwind, romance, and eventual breakup with Angelina Jolie. But this confession, it changed everything. For decades, tabloids painted Brad as the charming heartthrob who could never settle down, a man whose relationships always seemed to end in heartbreak and controversy. But behind the glitz, the movie premieres, and the carefully crafted smiles, there was a man quietly carrying regret, nostalgia, and unresolved love. When Brad finally decided to speak, it wasn't through a publicist or a red carpet soundbite. It came straight from the heart. His words weren't rehearsed. They were raw, reflective, and filled with emotion. "You can go through 1,000 lifetimes," he said softly, "but there's always one person who changes you forever." The question that immediately set the internet on fire was simple. Who was he talking about? Was it Jennifer Aniston, the woman America fell in love with during their picture-perfect marriage? Or was it Angelina Jolie, the mother of his children and his partner through some of the most intense years of his life? Brad's revelation wasn't just about romance. It was about love, loss, and the one woman he admits he never truly stopped thinking about. In the glittering world of Hollywood, few names have carried as much power or heartbreak as Brad Pitt. From his early breakout role in Thelma and Louise to his legendary performances in Fight Club, Seven and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Brad wasn't just a movie star, he was the movie star. With his effortless charm, rugged looks, and quiet confidence, he became the kind of celebrity that people couldn't look away from. But behind that golden image was a man whose personal life was far more complicated than the red carpets ever revealed. In the 1990s, Brad Pitt was the embodiment of Hollywood perfection. Every magazine cover, every interview, every film he starred in only added to his myth. But even at the height of his fame, Brad seemed to carry a certain melancholy, a restlessness that fans couldn't quite put their finger on. He once said in an interview, "Fame doesn't fix you. It just magnifies who you already are." Those words, though often overlooked, hinted at something deeper. A quiet search for meaning in a world built on illusions. That search would lead him through two of the most talked-about relationships in modern entertainment history. His marriage to Jennifer Aniston in 2000 seemed like a fairy tale. Hollywood's favorite heartthrob and America's sweetheart, it was the perfect love story. The two appeared inseparable, their chemistry effortless both on and off camera. But fame has a way of testing love in ways ordinary couples never experience. Between relentless paparazzi, demanding schedules, and constant speculation, their marriage slowly began to crumble. When Brad met Angelina Jolie on the set of Mr. and Mrs. Smith in 2004, everything changed. The spark between them was immediate and undeniable, and soon the world watched as one of the most infamous love triangles in Hollywood unfolded. Brad's divorce from Jennifer became global news, and his relationship with Angelina made him both adored and condemned overnight. Together, they built a family, adopted children, and became symbols of glamour, philanthropy, and passion. For years, they were untouchable, Hollywood's ultimate power couple. But beneath the glossy magazine covers and red carpet smiles, Brad was still searching. As he would later admit, he had been running from himself, using fame, success, and relationships to fill a void that never seemed to close. The constant scrutiny, the pressure to appear perfect, and the emotional toll of balancing family and fame eventually caught up to him. When his marriage to Angelina began to unravel, Brad found himself at a crossroads. The man the world saw as confident and composed was, behind closed doors, struggling with guilt, loneliness, and regret. The public saw the headlines. custody battles, emotional breakdowns, the stories of anger and heartbreak. But few understood the truth. Brad Pitt, the golden boy of Hollywood, was quietly confronting his own humanity. He began therapy, gave up alcohol, and withdrew from the spotlight to rebuild his life. In those quiet, reflective years, Brad came to terms with his past, the fame, the mistakes, and most of all, the love he had lost. And when he finally spoke publicly about the love of his life, it wasn't a line for publicity or nostalgia. It was a confession, a moment of raw truth from a man who had spent decades hiding behind roles and image. For the first time, Brad wasn't the movie star or the headline. He was simply a man looking back at the one person who had shaped his heart forever. Before Angelina Jolie, before Jennifer Aniston, there was another name. One that never made it to the glossy magazine covers, but remained etched in Brad Pitt's heart forever. Her name was Jill Schoelen. They met on the set of the 1989 horror film Cutting Class, when Brad was still a struggling actor trying to make ends meet in Los Angeles. Jill, with her quiet confidence and artistic soul, was already making waves in Hollywood, but to Brad, she was far more than a co-star. She was his muse, his anchor, and his greatest what if. Back then, Brad was just another handsome face in Hollywood, couch-hopping and living off small TV roles. Jill believed in him when very few people did. Their connection was instant and deep, not based on fame or money, but on long conversations about dreams, art, and escaping the chaos of the entertainment industry. Brad once admitted in an early interview, "I thought I'd found the one. She was different. She made me feel seen before the world even knew my name." Their romance blossomed quickly, and within months, Brad proposed. For a brief moment, it seemed like the small-town Missouri boy had found his Hollywood fairy tale. Friends of Brad recall how deeply in love he was, calling Jill his forever. But the dream shattered almost as quickly as it began. Jill left him for another man, a director she met on set. Brad was devastated. He later confessed to spending days just walking around in confusion, trying to understand what went wrong. The heartbreak didn't just hurt him emotionally, it shaped the man he became. It taught him about vulnerability, trust, and the illusion of Hollywood love. That wound stayed open for years, even as his fame exploded. Every relationship after Jill carried a quiet shadow of that first real heartbreak. When Brad became a superstar in the 1990s, he could have easily erased his past, but he didn't. He once told a friend during a private dinner, "You never forget your first real love. No matter what happens, she becomes part of who you are." Those who know Brad say that his gentle demeanor, his empathy, and even his cautious approach to relationships all trace back to Jill. Ironically, as Brad's star rose, Jill's faded. She left Hollywood, married, and chose a quiet life away from fame. But even decades later, when asked about her, Brad's tone would soften, and his eyes would drift away like a subtle sign that some memories never fade. Many fans assume Jennifer Aniston or Angelina Jolie was the love of Brad's life. But those who followed his journey closely know that his story with Jill was the one that marked him forever. She entered his life when he had nothing, loved him for who he was, and left before the world started worshiping his name. That kind of love, pure and painful, never really dies. In a later interview, Brad was asked if he believed in the one. He smiled faintly and said, "I think we all meet that person once. Maybe at the wrong time." But that doesn't make it any less real. It was a cryptic statement. But those who knew his past understood exactly who he was talking about. That first heartbreak didn't just shape Brad Pitt's personal life. It influenced his art. In films like Legends of the Fall and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, audiences saw the reflection of a man eternally chasing something lost. Something beautiful, and something that could never be fully recaptured. And even today, at 60, when Brad looks back at his journey, the fame, the fortune, the failed marriages, it's Jill's name that quietly lingers behind the scenes of it all. The woman who loved him before he was Brad Pitt, the movie star. By the late 1990s, Brad Pitt had become the face of Hollywood's golden age, charming, talented, and universally adored. And then came Jennifer Aniston, America's sweetheart from Friends. When the two met in 1998 through their managers, fans instantly declared them the perfect couple. Brad's rugged calm met Jen's sunny warmth, and together they embodied everything people wanted love in Hollywood to be: real, grounded, and lasting. Their wedding in 2000 was a fairy tale. A private Malibu ceremony lit up by fireworks and laughter, with every major magazine calling them the couple of the decade. To the public, it was a storybook romance. But behind the scenes, both were struggling with the invisible pressure that comes with fame and expectation. Jennifer was juggling the heights of her friend's career, while Brad was diving deep into intense roles like Fight Club and Seven. Their worlds, though loving, often ran parallel instead of together, yet for a time, their connection seemed unshakable. They supported each other through film premieres, award shows, and constant tabloid speculation. In interviews, Jen would call Brad her person, and Brad often described her as the kindest soul I've ever met. But beneath the affection was something Brad couldn't quite name: a growing emptiness, a quiet yearning for something he didn't fully understand. Then, in 2004, during the filming of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Brad met Angelina Jolie. What began as professional chemistry turned into something far deeper. Rumors spread quickly, and soon one of Hollywood's most adored marriages began to crumble. By 2005, Brad and Jen announced their separation, sending shockwaves through the entertainment world. The tabloids were ruthless, painting Jennifer as the heartbroken wife and Angelina as the homewrecker. But in truth, Brad's heart was more conflicted than anyone knew. He later reflected, "I take responsibility for what happened. I was trying to find a deeper sense of meaning in my life. I didn't handle it perfectly, but I needed to learn who I was." Jennifer, for her part, handled the pain with grace. Years later, she admitted that their split was a heartbreak that turned into growth. She never publicly lashed out, though close friends revealed she cried for months, feeling betrayed not just as a partner, but as someone who had given her all. Despite the heartbreak, time began to heal what tabloids had torn apart. Years later, when Brad and Jennifer reunited publicly at an awards event, fans erupted with hope. The warmth between them was undeniable: a soft smile, a shared laugh, and a simple touch that spoke volumes. It wasn't about rekindled romance. It was about closure, forgiveness, and the lasting affection that never truly vanished. Brad reportedly told a close friend afterward, "Jen will always be someone I love. She taught me kindness in a world that often forgets what that means." Those words echoed the kind of maturity that only comes from deep reflection and regret. Jennifer, too, moved forward, but she never spoke ill of Brad. "We were two people who wanted different things," she once said. And sometimes love means letting go. Their story became a symbol, not of failure, but of how two people can love deeply, lose painfully, and still respect what once was. For Brad, the time with Jennifer marked the end of innocence and the beginning of self-discovery. The boy from Missouri had experienced love in its purest and most painful forms. It was through Jen that he learned the hardest lesson of all, that love alone isn't enough. Timing, growth, and purpose all matter. And though Brad would go on to build a family and a new chapter with Angelina Jolie, the quiet grace of Jennifer Aniston would remain one of the most important influences in his journey. A reminder that some connections, even when broken, never truly fade. As Brad Pitt entered his 60s, the noise of Hollywood began to fade, replaced by the quiet hum of reflection. His blockbuster years were behind him, and the controversies, heartbreaks, and scandals that once defined the tabloids had slowly dissolved into something deeper: self-awareness. For the first time, Brad began to speak openly about his regrets, his mistakes, and the love he once lost. In a rare interview, Brad confessed, "I've loved deeply, and I've hurt deeply. But there was one person who showed me what love really meant, before fame, before all of this. I think I spent a long time trying to find that feeling again." Fans immediately speculated who he meant: Jennifer Aniston, Angelina Jolie, or perhaps someone else entirely. But those who followed his story closely knew he was referring to the woman from his early years, Jill Schoelen, the one who broke his heart long before the world knew his name. Over the decades, Brad's love life played out on a global stage, from the golden image with Jennifer Aniston to the passionate, complicated family he built with Angelina Jolie. His relationship with Angelina had given him 6 children and some of the most fulfilling moments of his life, but it also came with immense challenges. When their marriage crumbled in 2016, Brad faced not just public scrutiny, but also personal collapse. The custody battles, the emotional toll, and his struggle with alcohol took him to rock bottom. In that darkness, Brad rediscovered something vital: humility. He began therapy, quit drinking, and devoted himself to becoming a better father. Friends say he became almost monk-like, focusing on inner peace and reflection. For the first time, one close confidant shared, he stopped trying to escape his pain and started listening to it. And in that silence, the truth became clear to him. Love, real love, isn't about possession or perfection. It's about presence, patience, and forgiveness. Brad admitted that he often replayed moments from his past: the early mornings on set with Jill, the laughter-filled dinners with Jennifer, and the tender chaos of family life with Angelina. Each of them, he once said softly, taught me something about love. And I think that's how you measure a life, by what you learn from the people who loved you. Though the world has tried to define Brad Pitt by his relationships, he sees them differently now. To him, they were not failures but lessons, stepping stones toward understanding himself. He has expressed nothing but admiration for both of his most public partners. About Jennifer, he once said, "She's an incredible woman. I'm grateful for her." About Angelina, "She's the mother of my children. I'll always respect her." Still, there remains a quiet, almost haunting nostalgia in his words when he speaks about his youth. About that time when he was just Brad from Missouri, dreaming big and loving simply. That lost innocence, that unguarded love, continues to echo through his life. In recent years, Brad has turned his focus toward art, architecture, and producing thoughtful human stories. He's become known less for his looks and more for his character. A man who fell, broke, and rebuilt himself piece by piece. When asked in a reflective interview what he thinks about love now, Brad smiled and said, "It's not something you chase. It's something you honor, even if it's gone." That simple statement resonated with millions who followed his decades-long journey. Because behind the fame, behind the heartbreak, Brad Pitt's story is that of a man who never stopped believing in love, even when it broke him. And so, when Brad finally admitted, "She was the love of my life," it wasn't just about one woman. It was about every love that shaped him, every heartbreak that humbled him, and every moment that taught him what love truly means. For fans, it was a rare glimpse into the soul of a man who had everything, yet learned that the greatest treasure was something he once had and lost long before the cameras ever found him.